going on, guys? I'm Emery Cuzzy, and I'm sitting here with Dustin Zimmerman, and we are going to be doing the college football recap video from Week 8, and also looking forward to Week 9. We're going to do a fun new part of the show we haven't done before. It's called the Conference Roundup. Basically, it'll talk about all the conference teams that have a chance of making the playoffs and give percentages, because I know a lot of people don't realize what the odds are for their teams to actually make it and stuff like that. So that should be really fun for us.
It'll also be fun. Probably end up doing something similar to it, maybe a mini version. Once we introduce it, but week after week, seeing how they all change and as we get closer.
Yeah, exactly.
It almost feels like the beginning of like February when you're talking about March Madness. The first bracketology is coming out and all that.
Yeah, exactly. We did get to go to College Game Day to watch all that go down at Texas this last weekend. We did get like a helmet, a hard hat. I apologize, and then
the Home Depot hard hats.
Yeah, you need it because my wife Taylor, she got hit in the head a couple times by elbows and stuff because everybody's all getting excited and stuff. So you definitely need it. But it was a lot of fun.
You also caught a pancake.
I did. Bevo was sniping people with pancakes. And Bevo, yeah, he was
Bevo throwing?
They set a table up. Yeah. Where he was in the front and they set a table up and he was just cooking up there. Like they had it all set up. It was awesome. But he just started throwing pancakes at everybody like on the spatula.
Are you talking about the mascot?
Yes.
Or actual Bevo?
No, the mascot. You know what I mean. Yeah.
I actually thought you meant he was flinging with the horns or something. I was like,
come on. No, yeah.
He had no idea.
The mascot was up there. He had the pancakes. He was cooking the pancakes and he's chunking them at people in the front rows. Taylor got hit in the face. It was just something else. The first pancake that was thrown hit her in the face. I hope they got that on video. And then the like fourth pancake, it bounced off some dude's head, off his arm, and then I caught it out of the air. We started yelling and screaming, and I ate it. Boom! It was cool.
That's
awesome. Definitely sweet. But
speaking of, hopefully someone caught it on camera. That'll be something we're going to talk about.
I have had it on camera. Oh no, I know what you're talking about.
I was about to say once we get to some game recaps.
Yeah, let me pull this up. Here we go. So yeah, I mean, looking at Week 8, a lot has actually changed in the top 25. It's just shuffling of teams more so than anything, where teams are and where teams are going, because some teams on bye, things like that. One spot movements and stuff like that. Nothing crazy really happened in the totality of it, but
especially in the grand scheme of top 12.
Yeah, but there were some big movements, and we'll talk about them right now. So, talking about the game recaps, first off, you look at Texas versus Georgia there. Texas gets beat by 2 touchdowns. Wasn't even a close game. Georgia absolutely destroyed them in the first half. Quinn comes out. Arch goes in. Arch doesn't look good either.
No.
It was just Georgia's defense was so good.
Yeah.
Quinn comes back in the second half. Weirdest thing ever. First off, that was the worst time possible, in my personal opinion, to put Arch in. Just did not make sense to the game flow. And then Arch goes in, and the same thing happens. It's not like it was Quinn's. It was Quinn also, of course, is a little at fault. Offensive line's at fault.
Yeah, that was the bigger one. He had nothing.
Well, I think I'm going to blame Sark the most. I'm going to blame the coaching and things like that by far the most. But it wasn't just offense. Defense was getting gashed on the ground. It was the idea of it's time to meet the SEC. This was that game. It felt like that game.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's what a lot of fans and forum posters and all that are still saying.
Well, if Georgia was going to win, that was why, in my opinion.
Right.
And we talked about this on the last podcast. I thought Texas was going to win by a touchdown.
Yep.
You said Georgia at either side.
Hey, I said explicitly no bias.
Of course. Yeah, there's no bias here.
Definitely no bias. And I said, and I quote, while laughing, to be fair, no bias.
No, yeah. But I do mean, like, we talked about it. The reason that Texas is going to lose is because of the fact that Georgia is an SEC team and Texas hasn't played anybody. Well, that was absolutely right.
This was the wake-up call for fans, too.
Yes.
All the ones who are saying, we beat SEC teams. You beat Mississippi State.
You should have seen them.
It's not good. Oh, yeah. I had to miss. I had to work, so I didn't get to be at game day.
Yeah, if you would have seen the fans, they were very rowdy, very excited.
I love that.
5 for 5 on the panel picked UT to win.
Did they?
Yeah.
I didn't see
every single person
who they picked.
Kirk Herbstreit was the only one that didn't pick, and that's because he
can't.
He had to call the game. But yeah, 5 for 5 on the panel picked UT to win the
Gee.
game.
I mean, we knew Scotty would. That was obvious.
Well, yeah, Pat
Didn't
McAfee.
Saban flipped a coin, right?
Yeah,
Because he said they were both assistants. I
yeah,
can't be biased.
Kirby and Sark,
Sark.
have both been his assistants in the past. But that game was absolutely insane. Texas looked awful. Couldn't get the running game going like I thought they might be able to set up things. Their O-line did not look good. Their defense didn't look good.
Yeah. O-line we had talked about being one of the top in the nation.
Yeah.
And just
they
disappeared.
Yeah. And I mean, their quarterbacks didn't help them out. I mean, both quarterbacks with a fumble in or out right near the pocket, basically.
Yeah.
Quinn not stepping up in the pocket did not look good, looked very uncomfortable. Mental issues that we've talked about in the past and why he will not be one of our favorite draft prospects. He's got an amazing arm. Arm talent is there.
Right.
His mental game and the ability to control games is not.
Right.
And it definitely needs to go up because as me and Cam have talked about in the past, he is just Zach Wilson at this point.
Yeah.
Because Zach Wilson was an amazing college quarterback, had great stats, went to the league, mentally could not grow up.
Right.
And Quinn could have a similar issue. Now, Georgia also looked really good. Carson Beck did not look that good, and we're going to just have to talk about that because he still has not performed, but they still won 30-15. Trevor Etienne was the one that looked good, who had not performed.
Who we had been waiting on and talking about all year. Yeah, Beck had 23-41 and 3 picks.
And that's
they won in spite of Carson Beck.
He needs to be a game manager. He did not do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they had for Stetson Bennett. Everyone knew Stetson Bennett wasn't the best quarterback out there, but he was great at managing a game when they had the lead.
And he could move. He could mobilely get first downs when he had to. Things like that. They didn't need it. They had Trevor Etienne, who played really well.
Yeah.
And then you look at these other games. Let's get on to the next one. Yeah. Of course, that was the big one to talk about. But because it was such a big letdown for so many fans and this, all that stuff.
Only other thing I will bring up about it is, what is your opinion on the throw beer cans on the field and get a call overturned afterwards?
So I was sitting, I'm in a room with a ton of UT fans. That was the right call, but an illegal. It should not have happened.
I absolutely agree. The right call was a no call, and it should have been a pick.
Yes, it should have been a pick six.
But the precedent set was absolutely
terrible. That they should be suspended. Something should happen to that ref and crew. One thing I will say about that whole thing is how they describe it is basically they came together after the play. It's going on the Jumbotron.
Right.
They said they never looked at the Jumbotron. They're not allowed to look. Right. All that stuff. Overturn the call.
Right.
The beer cans thing actually might have worked because
100% worked
because of the fact that was playing on the Jumbotron over and over and over. They knew they missed it. They did. They did miss it.
Knew.
I'm sitting there. That's a bad call.
Right.
We're all yelling. I agreed with it completely. But you cannot overturn that call based on the rules in college football.
Especially with your average population of the people who were throwing stuff being probably 18 to 21-year-olds.
Oh, they threw a fit. And I mean, that's not okay.
And if you don't think other 18 to 21-year-olds will now follow suit, you'd be very incorrect.
Yeah. And I think that whole thing was just them throwing a fit, and it should not be allowed. And we should not have justified it by giving them the right call at the end of the day.
That's the big thing is you can't make that call change there.
At all, period.
At that point. If you have to do it immediately or not at all.
Call the right freaking thing, man. There was no flag on the play.
Shouldn't have called it in the first place.
Right. At all.
But if you were at the game, hope you weren't caught on camera if you were one of them, because they are using video surveillance, and there are
going to catch you.
Things going around on Instagram of the texts they're getting. They are revoking tickets.
I believe it. So, let's get on though, because we talked about the game for
that was just a huge controversy.
The whole thing was a controversy.
That needed to be discussed.
The whole game had a lot behind it for sure. Being a game day too on top of that was
could do 45 minutes on it, but we got a lot more.
Yeah. So. Bama, Tennessee. Well, let's just talk about the fact that Bama, and we actually made this case earlier in the year that Bama was a little suspect.
Yeah.
And I personally did not think Jalen Milroe has shown what, he can do, of course, and his upside, but also his downside is there. And it's actually showed a lot more this year. His one upside game is Georgia, where he threw for 350, whatever, 400, whatever it
Right.
was. Insane amount of stats and stuff.
Insane performance overall.
But at the same time, when he has bad games, he looks like this.
Mhm.
2 touchdowns, can't move the ball with his legs, 65.3 QBR. Tennessee has a good defense. This game was actually the sicko game of the week.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And before the game last week, we talked about how bad it was going to be.
Yep.
And we were right. We should have put it as the sicko game of the week. Crazy enough. We could have been, man, that would have been awesome because this is it.
Yeah. I mean, Tennessee still, or according to ESPN, has the number one defensive efficiency.
Right.
Their offensive is 45th. They are what Iowa basically has been the last several years, except Iowa's now worse than that too.
So they can score a little bit more than that because they have
Yeah.
one player that's actually good at football. His
You're
name
talking
is
about Dylan Sampson.
Dylan Sampson.
Dylan Sampson.
Yeah.
That is a
He's
man
very
who-
good. He's very good at football. So yeah, I think that this game was just sicko game of the week. Dylan Sampson still fumbled and lost it. He had 26 rushes though, 2 touchdowns. Nico bad, Jalen bad. Neither of these teams, and every time they got in the red zone, it was a jump ball to Ryan Williams.
Yeah.
He picked it off. They got
Yeah.
picked off because they did that on one drive. The next drive they do it again. I thought that this just was a, kind of a sicko, like I said, sicko game of the week. First half, 7 total points.
Yeah.
Like boring game, nothing
It
special.
was horrible.
And, I think that at the end of the day, the team that won was just kind of the team that made less mistakes, more so than anything. And that's how you have to win games sometimes.
I mean, sometimes that's what it breaks down to. You got 2 evenly matched teams. They were 7-11. Yeah, I'm not surprised the one that made less mistakes. Also, probably don't do the whole jump shot practice on a play. I don't know if you saw that
I
video.
did.
It didn't work.
No.
Turns out.
BYU, Oklahoma State, I stayed up for because I'm going to college game day. We have to wake up at 4:30. And BYU, Oklahoma State becomes an absolute freaking banger at the end of that game. I was watching that game and I was like, oh my gosh, my prediction is going to be wrong again. Look at what I just did with this BYU.
Just immediately jinxed.
I know, every time, man. But BYU does pull it out with a last second, 10 seconds left on the clock touchdown. Right after Ollie Gordon had a game of his own. And
about time.
Yeah,
Been
right.
waiting on that one.
But BYU was able to find enough to get out of this game and make a very, very lucky escape, basically. So let me say the Illinois-Michigan game went exactly as we said.
Yep.
This is a bet. Michigan is very fraudulent.
Michigan's unwatchable. That's
their offense. Is
that's
so
why
bad.
anybody talking about that Texas Michigan game as a reason Texas is as good as what people were saying, number one, essentially, you can't use it.
No.
Just throw it out. It's a pointless one.
Yep.
Michigan is really bad.
Yeah, 4-3, 2-2 in conference. Luke Altmaier had a whole 80 yards.
80 yards. 9 for 18, 80 yards and a touchdown.
But
68.1 QBR.
I mean, Michigan's defense looked good, but they couldn't move the ball enough for.
So when they have multiple first-round draft picks on it.
Oh yeah, but they couldn't move the ball enough to help their defense. Like they put their defense in poor positions all game. Another sicko game. No points in the fourth quarter. 8 points by Illinois in the third. It was just a barn burner.
How about Donovan Edwards just absolutely not stepping it up?
No, I will continue to say that he's not good. We've been saying
that Bowlings is the clear RB1 on the team. He goes for another 87 and a touchdown.
Right. But I was saying that Donovan Edwards wasn't good last year when I was, it's not like, Blake Corum is leaving something to somebody.
Right.
But I didn't know Mullings was going to take over.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger shock is they haven't had to lean on Edwards.
Yeah,
because Mullings has been so good.
Exactly. But yeah, so this game was just as boring as the Tennessee-Alabama game.
A lot of Big Ten games are like that right now, except for one team, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, so let me hop over recap of the Week 8 stuff. A couple things have changed, and here we go. Week 9. We're gonna do our very regular AP poll rapid fire.
Yep.
I think, of course, we'll talk about Oregon and the spoiler makers real quick because Dustin did have Purdue, But Purdue just doesn't have any explosion anywhere on their offense. 0 points in this game.
It was like their
So-
largest loss in program history, their first home shutout in like 30 years or something crazy.
Right.
Like literally every record of badness that could have been broken happened the 1 week I say, yeah, they're not going to lose by 28. I didn't ask them to win.
Yeah, they just needed to score a touchdown and have been okay.
Going into it, all the commentators were like, Purdue, no one has a record like them against top 5. And then they do that.
Yep, and lay that goose egg.
In front of a packed house, too. It was surprisingly impressive attendance.
Yeah.
But yep, it happens.
No emotional lull after beating Ohio State.
No, they did not have the hangover that we saw from after Bama beat Georgia and went into
Right.
Vandy. Oregon avoided that.
Yeah,
By a lot.
I will add that we're going to add game of the weeks. This is a team that's going to have one of the game of the weeks. We'll talk about this game of the week later. It's versus number 20 Illinois. Georgia, next up, moves in front of undefeated Penn State. I think that's interesting. I think they should have been 3 because it creates more controversy when Penn State gets to play Ohio State, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And also, why is Georgia getting to jump teams just because they beat Texas? Texas hadn't played anybody. We just talked about that. They hadn't done it.
This is why the college football playoff first poll doesn't come out till November. Because like we've said in the past, a lot of this is menial. We're just, it's for views, it's for clicks.
No,
But
for sure.
Since we have it, we got to review it. So, I mean, honestly, in my opinion, 2 through 4 can all be adjusted however you really want it to be.
Yeah.
Ohio State's got 1 loss by a point to the number 1 team. Penn State's undefeated. Georgia just beat the number 1 team.
But lost to
Bama, who's obviously
number
underperforming.
number 15 on the board.
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot of movement that could happen there, and I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, I agree. I believe Ohio State came off of a bye, so nothing much there. Penn State also on the bye.
Yep.
Texas, we just talked about this, but I want to add the emotional lull and how this game affects them going forward. They actually have to play a pretty big game next week, and it's on our game of the weeks. Goes to number 25 Vanderbilt.
I love it.
Who we'll talk about in a minute for Vandy, but Texas, they have to respond to an SEC team that beat Alabama.
Yeah.
And currently, by football math, Vandy is better than Texas.
Are we doing the transitive property here?
Vanderbilt beat
Bama,
Alabama.
who beat
Alabama
Georgia.
beat Georgia. Georgia beat Texas. I'm just here for it.
Georgia State beat Vandy.
There
You
you go.
really want to take this far.
Exactly.
Give Georgia State number 1 in the country.
Why not? At least number 4.
There you go. Fair enough.
Miami, another close game against Louisville, 52-45, 97 points scored. Okay, they can score. Great.
Yeah, I have 2 takeaways from that. Is 1, they've got to get better at beating teams they should beat. This is the 3rd close game that they probably could have. Should have lost.
ACC teams.
Specifically. I mean, Vautech now, Cal, and then Louisville this past week. On the other hand, though, they've got a lot of grit to not drop one of those games. It is hard to win.
Cam Ward is good.
Oh, we all know that.
And
But the rest of the team has to step up to it. Well, the defense, like I said, they gave it 45 to Louisville.
their defense hasn't stepped up all year.
So I think Miami appropriately ranked. I don't think they will, as of right now, I would not have them in championship contention by any means, though.
No.
Which is weird to say for a number 6 team in the country.
Right. LSU, game of the week at number 14, Texas A&M, the Texas A&M Aggies. Both teams have looked good. I believe Texas A&M coming off of a bye.
No.
No. Mississippi State.
Beat Mississippi State by 10.
That's not good.
Which is how much Georgia beat Mississippi State.
Fair.
And Georgia was at home.
But LSU did blow out Arkansas.
They
We
did.
had a very big talk about, and you definitely said they were going to, Arkansas was going to pull it out.
I thought so. Yeah, and on ESPN, one of their analysts also.
They did. No, yeah, it's not just us. Believe me.
Arkansas just laid an egg.
Something weird I want to say is Clemson swapped spots with Iowa State. I don't know why that happened. Clemson is the 1-loss team. Iowa State undefeated. That's just weird.
Because Iowa State probably should have lost. It took a last-minute touchdown to beat UCF,
But
who was really bad.
still, I don't get it.
I mean,
Why
they go off
switch
of
'em?
resume. Resume doesn't look good when you barely eke out a win against UCF,
Well, let's talk
who
about
has one good player by stats.
Fair.
Standards.
Let's talk about a resume team. Notre Dame, game of the week versus number 24 Navy.
Yep.
Navy is undefeated. Notre Dame has lost one game to the NIU. I don't know.
Was it Wolfpack?
Wolfpack. Thank you.
Was
Yeah,
that
I was gonna say Bearcats, and I was like, that's wrong. That's Cincinnati.
Yes.
But yeah, so Notre
Oh,
Dame
no, sorry. Huskies.
Huskies.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
yeah.
knew it was one of those wild
Mhm.
creatures.
Notre Dame does get to play against the Navy triple option. We'll see how that goes. It's a big game for sure because that will tell us a little bit about the possible at-large bids.
Yes.
Indiana looking awesome, but they do lose their quarterback, and he is out. I'm not sure. You kind of explained how. Let's hear your PA take on it.
I mean, they were pretty. Finger injuries are weird because it really affects, or it depends on how the QB can feel the ball more
Right.
than anything.
For sure.
I'm not sure if he's got some numbness going on. I'm not sure if it's just some soreness. I'm not sure if it's precautionary. I mean, there's no way to access the medical records there.
Right,
So, I
of
mean,
course.
he could be out just this week and he can tape it up and
Be fine.
practice, see if he can throw with some tape on it next week. It could be they are not concerned, and that's a Signetti decision and hold him out an extended amount of time.
Mhm.
I have no idea, though.
Well, they
So-
get College Game Day against Washington,
They do.
which is just a disgusting thing when there's good teams everywhere playing each other.
Yeah. And
So-
he's definitely out for that,
For
which
college,
is really weird. that
even weirder.
the possibly most important player in the game is not playing it.
Right. 15 Alabama goes is at home versus the number 21 Missouri Tigers. That is considered a game of the week, but that is also probably a sicko game of the week at the same time because it could be just as bad as this Tennessee
Missouri
game.
eked out a win over Auburn.
Yeah,
So,
but I feel like they play better against Alabama. They come in ready.
I
But
mean, everyone does.
yeah,
It's what you do.
17 Boise State, non-power 4 game of the week at the UNLV. You said runners. What is
Running Rebels.
it? Running Rebels. I got to get that right.
Got to get the Running Rebels in.
Man, I know. But yeah, Boise State, big game versus the Running Rebels. It could impact some things when it comes to voting and end of year stuff. So, and then 17 through 19 all on buys, including Boise State, who loses 2 spots on a buy, and Pitt moves up a spot on a buy. I don't know how they figured that out, but whatever.
I think that was from Missouri dropping.
Oh yeah,
Pitt moved up because
Pitt.
Missouri fell below.
No, I meant the Boise State moving back.
Kansas State moving up.
They moved 2 spots.
Oh,
back.
no,
It
Indiana.
was even more than
Indiana jumped after beating
Yeah,
Nebraska
no,
by 49.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they killed them. I
That's
remember
why.
that now. That's why I was saying they look so good.
Yeah.
SMU, the ACC game of the week at Duke, both 6-1 teams. It should be
Surprisingly low
interesting.
spread.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last one on the board, we're going to skip the 2 military academies because we don't have to talk about the triple option. They've been so great. Bryson Daly's good. Vanderbilt is ranked for the first time since 2013.
Tell your kids about ranked Vanderbilt.
It's
That's all I
pretty
need to say.
amazing. Pretty amazing stuff here.
Now, will they stay there after this week playing Texas? We'll talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so now what we're going to go into is going to be, let me stop the share and go to the next page. It's going to be our conference roundup. And like I said this before, this is a new thing we're going to do, but also it gives us the odds for all these teams going into week 9 and what their odds are for possibly making the playoffs.
Yep.
So in the SEC, you can see all those teams up there at the top. Texas still has a massive chance to make the playoffs at 78%.
And they should.
Yeah. It's
Theoretically.
including at-large bids and stuff like that. They have 1 loss on here. I don't know why Alabama still has such a good chance.
I don't understand 44% at all.
Yeah, we have to talk about this because at 44%, like you're expecting them, they're a 2-loss team. Like
And
this is an
Both in
at-large
conference,
and
too.
This is an at-large team.
Right.
And to say that they jump over some of these other teams that have 1 loss is just insane to me. Texas A&M 33%. Tennessee, who beat them, is looking really good. But LSU, 8th ranked LSU, 1 loss, 39.7%.
Yeah.
It's like I don't get it. Missouri, who has to play them and plays them this week, if they beat them, like you're so wrong on these predictions, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just for the Alabama slate of it.
I just don't understand with them having 2 losses how they can be that high. Now, I don't know ESPN's algorithm. I have no idea what all's involved in it. but for that to even be a chance, while also having three SEC teams well above them too,
Right.
is this metric is very confusing.
Well, they also have to play Missouri this week, and then at LSU the week
Yep.
after,
And then
or they get a bye. I'm sorry, and then the week after.
yes,
So yeah, I don't get it. I would love to see what happens, of course, in the coming weeks. But
Yeah.
yeah, Alabama's is definitely interesting. And then we put any team that we thought could make an at-large or win their conference. If you look up there, Texas actually has a massive chance to win the conference at 33.2%.
Yeah.
Surprised by that also.
well, they're not counting into or taking into account the Vandy at home effect.
Well,
So.
how about Texas A&M week, big rivalry rematch or restart?
I feel like Herb Street on game day, not given his take on the game he's calling. Feel like I should leave out my opinions on the Texas game. I'm not sure they'll be the most accurate or non-biased.
I would. We will see because we're not there yet. Obviously, that's the last week of the year, but it should be interesting.
Right. I will say it's similar to my OU Texas take, which I was very wrong about. But on a rivalry game like that, especially the first one in 13 or 12 or 13 years, 13 years, it's a toss up. It's going to be a great game, and there is a chance it decides a playoff spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And then going to the next grouping, the ACC, Miami at 86% to make the playoffs. And I just want to talk about
it's annoying, but
they're undefeated.
You also can't argue it because they're undefeated.
That should be closer to 60%. Their
schedule is Florida State, Duke, Georgia Tech, who has an injured QB, Wake Forest, and Syracuse.
I know. And
their strength of schedule is nothing.
Golly, it's crazy. Yeah, and they're 7-0.
Now, when they lose to Clemson in the ACC championship game, that'll be funny.
They'll still be the at-large.
Exactly.
They'll still get an at-large, and I get the 86%, but shoot, 86%. Can't it be like 60%?
The only way they miss the playoff is if they somehow there's a really weird.
Syracuse is good.
They're a team that needs time to come together, so it's possible because that's their last game. That's one that happens.
Fair enough. They don't have to play the other teams that are up there on the board, Clemson, SMU, or Pitt in the coming weeks. Lucky them. Clemson does, I believe, have to play some of those teams. But also Clemson is, in our eyes, the best ACC team.
They will play Pitt, but not SMU or obviously Miami.
Gotcha. Pitt is undefeated and getting completely disrespected at 12.4 and a 1.2% chance to win conference. I mean, they're undefeated. They're an undefeated team. Just making the conference championship gives them a chance to win conference. Like, what is that?
Their underrating is really funny to me because when I was looking at the data, I saw like Illinois, which we'll talk about at 6 though, and then Pitt only being 12 but being undefeated. I was like, really?
Yeah,
that is really sad.
Pitt does have to play SMU and Clemson before the season ends,
and Louisville, who's almost beat Miami.
We'll say they beat SMU. Pitt beats SMU and then loses to Clemson. Well, I mean, that gives them still an opportunity to get in if Miami loses to a non.
I was about to say it would hinge on Miami losing,
right?
Because the issue there is I don't think the ACC gets all three of them in that scenario, which would be Clemson, Miami, and Pitt.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, even playing in the conference championship game though.
Right. If
Miami were to lose a game, I think Pitt goes to the conference championship game based on rankings. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's interesting. But there's a lot to talk about. Clemson is the only team that's played 5 conference games.
Yeah.
They're 5-0. It's just there's a lot to go on in the ACC still, and I have a pretty interesting prediction for later on. But
I'm almost concerned.
No, it's gonna be awesome. You're gonna be so excited.
Oh, good. Okay.
The Big Ten. There's a lot of teams in the Big Ten that have a very good chance to make it. As we know, Penn State, Oregon, and Indiana, all undefeated. Both Illinois and Ohio State lost one game. Ohio State loses to Oregon by 1 point. They are actually the favorites to win the conference at 34.7%. I actually completely agree with that. They are going to play Oregon again, most likely, after they either beat Penn State or lose to them. If they lose to Penn State gets to play Oregon because they don't have them on their schedule prior.
Well, November 23rd, Indiana plays Ohio State too. So a lot of these ones for the Big Ten are going to sort themselves out.
Right, for sure.
The confusing part is if Ohio State drops another one,
Mhm.
but somehow stays second in the conference, which I highly doubt would happen because you'd need other 2-loss teams, and then they go in and beat Oregon. Then you get to really have fun of, okay, where does that put everyone?
The other team I really want to talk about is Indiana. They are
Yep.
getting disrespected a little bit, in
Well,
my
like I
opinion.
said, they have to play Ohio State anyways. So
Indiana doesn't.
yeah.
I mean, sorry, Illinois doesn't.
Oh,
My fault.
okay.
I meant the team that's getting disrespected is Illinois.
Yes.
6.6% to make the playoffs. Beat Michigan last week. Beat Purdue by one before that, but also losing to Penn State 21-7. Now they go to at Oregon in Eugene. Tough place to play. We've noticed that as when Ohio State played there. But if they're a 2-loss team and they won every Big Ten game other than those two, and both of those teams are going to make it, there should be a little bit of a leeway here, in my personal opinion, of making like the number 12 spot overall.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be, again, another interesting one of how does that play out.
Yeah, so I think that they're an interesting team, like we were saying.
Big Ten's either going to really sort itself out or get really confusing
Complicated.
as the season continues to go on.
Yeah.
Which is what the SEC has already decided to start doing.
For everybody that, loved and hated my BYU take and said that it wasn't like crazy enough. Well, BYU has a 23.7% chance to win the conference championship after they beat Oklahoma State last week. If they do end up winning the conference championship, they do get a first round bye. I know that in the short and in our original, I did not say bye. I said home field. I meant bye.
Right.
They get to be a top 4 team. That is still on the table. They are undefeated. They don't necessarily, and I'm trying to understand, why they're 23.7 and Kansas State is actually higher above them, because that is implying that Kansas State actually beats them this year. And I mean that's implying that there's a reason Kansas State should do that, but Kansas State got beat by them 38-9.
Right.
BYU is literally projected less chance to win conference, and they beat Kansas State 38-9.
I did just realize actually there is a way BYU could win the conference and not get a bye, and it would basically be assuming the non-Power 4
right,
conference champion, which would likely be Boise State.
Yeah,
we've looked at so far. I don't see that happening, especially if BYU is undefeated. I don't see a way the committee says that.
If BYU loses one game this year, say they lose to Arizona, not Arizona, yeah, anybody. Say they lose to
an Arizona team,
Utah. Say they lose to Utah, whatever, whoever. They're not losing to UCF, Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, or Houston, but whatever.
Their remaining schedule.
Not my point.
Really bad.
Not my point. Say they lose one.
Yeah.
Go to the conference championship, win it. You're not putting a one-loss Boise State over BYU, are you?
It won't happen. No.
Like that's
what I was saying is it'd be funny and there's a way, but it's not going to happen.
Right, and unrealistic.
It's more of something to explain why this isn't an exact 1-to-1.
Yeah. That schedule is terrible, but whatever. There's no way they should be a 23.7% chance, in my personal opinion, because their schedule is so easy. And if all you have to do is make the conference championship, that'd be 50-50, say.
Yeah,
5%.
I mean, those percentages are essentially just saying what their head-to-head against the other two would be, and then divide it by about 2. To say one or the other.
But they already beat Kansas State 38-9.
Right,
and they
lower. Dominated them.
They're lower
with an amazing kickoff return for a touchdown.
The only reason Kansas State gets in is if they beat Iowa State in the last week of the year on November 30th. I mean, okay, so why does Iowa State and Kansas State automatically have a better percentage than BYU?
Yeah, that was one I was trying to figure out with these power indices. I mean, similar to the Pitt one, they're really underrated for an undefeated team. But the BYU one is actually head scratching because they've beaten one of the other teams in their conference versus Pitt has not with the other 3 listed. It makes no sense for them to be lower than Kansas State in any metric.
But since they are, it even proves my point more.
Yeah.
With the fact that they are going to be a top 4 team. I'm very comfortable with that. All they have to do is win out a very easy schedule and beat the winner of Iowa State, Kansas State at the end of the year. If it's Kansas State, they already won 38-9. So I'm maybe winning twice against anybody is hard, but when you're you did that, that's a very big boost.
Right.
They do have BYU, and we have to talk about this because I believe how it started was he was being made fun of for being a Jewish football player at BYU in a Mormon school.
Right.
He took and ran with the fact that BYU is like bringing together this whole thing.
Yeah.
I know, he had no offers coming out of high school, and made his way to BYU. Started at a school where Jewish players do not play normally, and is now embracing BYU so that he can almost like spread awareness, because he's like, look, we can do this. My teammates love me.
Yeah.
I'm not Mormon. I'm not, and it's pretty amazing whole thing. And I really, really like it. And I'm completely behind them, as you can tell with my prediction and everything. So hopefully we can continue.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I think they will. Like I said, but.
And then, sorry. Go ahead.
It's going to come down to the conference championship because the rest of their season sucks.
Yeah. Then up next, you have, even if they lose, it still comes down to the conference championship, because Kansas State, it's a 3-way tie if Iowa State loses to Kansas State. Yeah. And I think BYU still gets in.
Yeah.
By metric. But whatever. So next up, Notre Dame, Army, Boise State, Navy, all these teams that are outside non-Power 4 teams. We have a big debate coming on this one. But Notre Dame at 56.1%. Dustin called this very early in the year, right
after they lost to Northern Illinois.
Right.
I said, enjoy yelling about how bad they are. You're going to see them in the playoff anyways.
And it's actually a little bit more nerve-wracking now, in my personal opinion, because of the fact that they do have to play a Navy team that is undefeated,
and Army,
and then an Army team that's undefeated.
I wasn't expecting the service academies to come out and play like they are.
Always have to be worried about Florida State.
Yeah, always, for sure. Fun fact: Duke got its first ever win over Florida State.
Ever. Oh,
it was the first time Duke's ever beat Florida State in football.
Very cool. Did not know that. That doesn't make me feel better, but whatever.
Still interesting.
It is, absolutely. In their remaining schedule, they do have Navy, Army, and then they have Florida State, USC, and Virginia. But when you think about that schedule, you think the powerhouses are going to be Florida State, USC, and they're not.
Nope, it's the service academies.
Yeah, well, 1-6 for Florida State, 3-4 for USC. Virginia,
Lincoln Riley's
surprising enough, Virginia has a 4-3 record, which is the best of the bunch.
They just got stomped by Clemson.
Exactly. But Navy and Army are both undefeated. They bring up the win totals of the teams remaining for them.
Yeah.
And it should be very interesting. Both games at home, though.
Yeah.
They have a 4-game stretch at home before they have to go to USC, who has been way underperforming. So this should be a team that makes the playoffs, in my opinion. 56%. Obviously tells us that everybody else thinks that.
And they don't have to worry about a conference championship game. So
right.
They're truly the definition of destiny is in their own hands. They went out on a schedule they should win out on.
Exactly.
And they will make it quite easily.
Well, let's talk about it, because let's put Army and Navy together. Let's skip over Boise State a little bit. We'll talk about them for sure. But Army and Navy both have to play Notre Dame, and then they both have to play each other. Right. And then they might play each other again. And I want to actually get into this debate really quick, because if both of these teams go to the conference championship game, right, and say Army wins the conference championship game, and then the next week they have to play against each other again, and then Navy wins that.
We're assuming they both lost to Notre Dame already, because that does change the answer quite a bit. They either have to both win or both lose.
Let's say they both win.
Okay. They both beat Notre Dame.
Let's say Army, here we go. Right?
This is hypothetical.
Army and Navy beat Notre Dame.
Okay. So Notre Dame's completely out of the playoff.
Exactly.
That's what would happen there.
Right.
Okay.
Army and Navy beat Notre Dame. Army wins the conference championship game. Navy wins the
rematch.
Army-Navy game. Who goes? Or do both go?
Both won't go, because the playoff committee will refuse to put both in and leave out an SEC or Big Ten team.
Okay.
Just because that's how viewership and bias works.
Are you sure? I mean, I would love to see them play each other again.
Yeah, but you have a lot of people who are like, if they get destroyed, which would likely happen, then the playoff committee, it's a much bigger risk for them to do that.
No, that's
put
fair.
in, like, for instance, say Bama wins out, craziness happens, and they end up being the 12th seed. the committee has a lot less risk of them underperforming than one of the service academies.
Oh yeah, I agree completely.
So, I mean, all politics aside, it'd be a lot of fun to have both in.
Okay, so
But
Army.
I think, oh, go ahead.
Oh well, I was gonna say, so Army and Navy went out.
Okay. And
Play
then they
play
trade.
in the conference championship game,
Yeah.
and then play in the Army Navy game. Does the Army Navy game winner go, or does the conference championship winner go?
Well, there's the fun thought that they both shot each other in the foot and neither make it.
Okay, but if you had to
And
pick,
that's what I think happens.
Oh, okay.
I think neither would end up making it
With the one loss,
because they're gonna. This is assuming Boise State wins their conference championship.
Okay.
They become the non-Power 5 conference winner. That gets an automatic bid. I also think it depends how much they beat Notre Dame by. If it's close games, they probably don't make it. If it's big win for either of them, that changes how that works.
Okay.
Because again, flukes happen. We're not putting Northern Illinois in the playoff though.
fair enough.
So, but I think it's one of those things. There's just not enough exposure for the playoff committee to do it.
I think personally, if I had to pick one, I think that the conference championship team should make it and be the non-Power 5 team that makes it if Boise State somehow does not perform.
I agree with that. If Boise State was to lose, then yes, whichever wins the championship solely because they have to pick that team.
Yes. Okay.
That would be the reason.
Completely agree with that.
Unless something else really weird happened.
With Boise State does have a big game this week. We talked about it earlier. Boise State is only loss was to the Oregon Ducks, who is number 1 currently on the board. Boise State has by three, yes, 37-34, close game.
Yep.
They get to go play the Running Rebels this week in UNLV at UNLV, which is a huge game because the winner of that game will most likely win the Mountain West.
Yep. And UNLV still with their backup quarterback,
who is not a backup. He's very good at football.
No, he could be a QB1 at many schools. He's done fantastic,
and he's a 5th-year transfer, so he was able to adjust quickly.
He's the one from Campbell, right?
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, so there's 6 games left on their schedule. They play San Diego State, Nevada, San Jose State, who's very good. Don't forget about them.
Nash is very good.
Don't forget about them. Wyoming and Oregon State. I think that the winner of this game probably goes to the playoffs. And as you can see,
assuming no other upsets or losses.
But yeah, if whoever wins this game and wins out, basically.
Right.
UNLV or Boise State. UNLV up there at 16.8%. Boise State at 46.5%. The current spread on the game is -2.5 to the Boise State Broncos, which is not very much. No. Very close game. Very close prediction. 62.1% matchup predictor to Boise State. 65 point over under. It's going to be a crazy awesome game.
Ashton Genty's over under on touchdowns is probably 2.5.
Most likely,
if I had to guess.
Why wouldn't it be?
So neither team's lost a conference game.
No. This is.
There is the chance they meet again in a conference championship. Then
yes.
So same question as Army Navy.
That would have to be a shooting themselves in the foot because they would both.
I was about to say Boise State wins this one, like we assume they will, and then UNLV pulls off a miracle and beats them. They both went out after that, and UNLV beats them in the bowl. You think?
I think neither of them make it. Someone else makes it because they would have 2 losses at that point.
Well, then you got to find a non-Power 5 team that deserves it over them.
I have one.
Is that on the board right now, Emery?
You ready?
Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, how do you? Yeah, I'm going to. I'm going
to do it, aren't you?
I'm going to. 3% for Liberty.
Yep. You're gonna see it. Okay.
Undefeated Liberty. Come on now. Think about it. How do you kick an undefeated team out of the playoffs?
Watch me.
When
put me on the committee and watch me.
Well, we just made a case that UNLV versus Boise State, they're both 2 lost teams. So
and they'd both beat Liberty by 50.
It does not matter. Because they're undefeated. And you have to give Cinderella teams Cinderella moments.
No, you give Cinderella teams Cinderella moments when you have 68 teams to include. When you have 12, you do not.
Yeah, I think in this moment you have to.
No.
If they're the only undefeated team coming out of their conference.
Their conference? What conference is that?
It does not matter.
Oh,
it doesn't matter.
Really?
It does not matter where the conference
It doesn't.
is. It does not matter.
Let me tell you, Conference USA, which includes powerhouses Sam Houston State.
Yes, it does.
Who beat? Not forget that.
Texas State. Don't forget that.
Oh, the other
powerhouse.
Hot take, I believe you had.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Western Kentucky, solid.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Jacksonville State.
I am definitely getting more opinionated in the right way for you. Definitely believing your side now.
I'm just saying, how do you hold out? I mean, we've seen it before in the past where a undefeated team has won doesn't go to the national championship and then wins their game in UCF, and they are national champions because
No,
yes, they are.
they claim it.
They should. They are absolutely allowed to, because they were undefeated.
Yeah, but then they went and won a real bowl game too.
Yeah, they did. So why can't Liberty do something like that?
Because they're not
as good.
Nearly
no,
as good
I
as
agree.
that UCF team.
I agree, because we had this Florida State issue last year and stuff like that. I completely get it. Jordan Travis goes down, all that stuff. Florida State doesn't make the playoffs. 28 players transfer, basically. They had 3 starters in the game against Georgia.
Yeah, that was unbelievable.
And that was terrible. The whole thing was terrible. But, and as a Florida State fan, believe me, it hasn't gotten any better. But at the same time, Liberty, as an undefeated team, goes to a bowl game. Say they get a good bowl. Say they play number 14, whoever that is, LSU at that point, whoever, I don't care. And they beat them. Like, they should have been in the playoffs at that point, right?
They beat who?
Say they beat LSU. Say LSU loses another game and they beat LSU.
If your scenario includes beating LSU, sure, yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, because they're going to have to play a really good team to claim national champions.
Not gonna happen.
They're gonna win out.
Be close.
Tell me they're gonna win out. So they're not gonna win.
Here's my only issue, or my biggest issue with that take. Western Kentucky is also 3-0 in the conference.
Yeah,
same record. If Western Kentucky wins out and beats Liberty,
no,
they don't.
No.
And Western Kentucky's losses are to Alabama and Boston College. Liberty, non-conference, played Campbell and New Mexico State.
You're correct.
I
can't argue that.
They would have the same conference resume by my scenario, but you're saying one would get in and one wouldn't.
Correct.
And that makes no sense then.
It's a 2-loss team.
Yeah, but a 0-loss team when they didn't play anybody is not better. And Western Kentucky would prove it at that point, which will probably happen.
Liberty will beat them.
Well, when they play November 23rd.
Yeah, they will play, yes. So we will see. I guess we will look at that scenario again when that comes up. After they went out and their percentage isn't 3% and it's more like 12%, you're going to be like, okay, look, yeah, I'm not wrong, but I'm not right. And that's the words that are going to come out of your mouth, because I know that.
Kennesaw State is the second worst team in the country.
It is.
Worst by a lot of metrics, second worst by FPI, and most people would agree Kent State is worse. Okay. That's Liberty's next game. If Kennesaw State by 50, right? Pulls off the upset, I hope you know I will spend 30 minutes on my own doing this. I'm just going to...
It's not a hot take. I'm not taking a hot take.
Every 5 seconds, I'm going to stare at the camera and just hit refresh and then look at you. And then we're just going to do that for 30 minutes.
But it's not a hot take. It's a question. It's more of like, should an undefeated team not make the playoffs?
Yes.
Okay.
If their strength of schedule is 130th,
we will see.
Because my thing is, you have to imagine though. Okay, put them in a league like what Georgia's played. They've played Bama already. They've played Texas already.
Correct. And they're the number 2 overall team in the nation because of it.
And they deserve it.
Absolutely.
And with a loss to one of those.
Yeah.
If Liberty did that, they're getting smacked by 60.
But it's not about that. It's a non-Power 5 team getting a chance to play with the big boys because they have earned it. And an undefeated season is an earning of that.
Okay, so the other scenario then, Liberty wins out, goes undefeated, Boise State wins out. Who gets in then? Do you want to give the Cinderella and the conference championship then? The fifth conference championship?
Boise State has to go in.
Right.
But that's not, but that's different.
Liberty over Tennessee, for instance?
Because yes, there is. And I know what sells. I know what you're going to say. They're not going to do it because the SEC sells.
It's because Tennessee would beat Liberty by 40.
It does not matter.
Oh my!
Because at that point, Tennessee did not earn that position in the playoffs by losing too many games.
Unless they were 11th in the AP poll.
Oh, who?
Or sorry, 12th. 12th in the AP poll.
Right.
Assuming Boise State's
right, exactly.
But Liberty would take the 12th team spot then.
If they were the P5 non-Power 4 team to make the playoffs for winning the conference.
Right.
Yes, agreed. No, I'm not. I'm not against you on the fact that Liberty hasn't played anybody. I'm completely with you. I just think a team that's undefeated should get a chance to play for the national championship. Like they will be national champions if they win again, and they're gonna have to play someone good if they don't make the playoffs. Correct?
Maybe. I mean, bowl makers may go, no, we're not having Liberty. It's
Okay.
not happening.
On to the next subject. We can talk about Memphis real quick. Memphis is a team that has one loss, and they have a chance to make the playoffs. 3.8%. They probably won't make the playoffs, but they could win their conference, and some crazy things could happen that make them very eligible to do that. They have a very, very solid defense, very solid defense, somewhat suspect offense. Now, let's move over to our Super Dogs. I'm going to let you go first because I think it's definitely a more interesting finish than yours.
I think I texted you about it this morning, didn't I? Or was it yesterday? I don't remember.
Yes, and I will tell you it has changed 3 points.
3.5. It was 21.5 when I texted you.
Well, there you go.
Well, mine is Illinois, the Fighting Illini, led by Luke Altmaier. Honestly, this is not anything that I think Illinois' secret underdog or a dark horse and is going to win the conference and make the playoff or any of that. I just think a now 25-point spread is an insane spread for a conference game for a 7-0 team against a 6-1 team who has not looked bad.
Absolutely.
I mean, Purdue did take them to overtime and almost won. Probably should have won, really. And Nebraska did too, but I just don't see them not stepping up and playing like a 6-1 team. They obviously still know how to win. I'm not saying they'll win by any means. Don't get me wrong there. But 25 points is a lot to give.
We have seen this scenario before. We did this with Penn State. Penn State was a 21-point favorite.
Yep.
They, of course, did not win by 21. They only won by 14.
Right.
Perfectly.
And that was at Penn State.
Yes, perfectly fine. Purdue, scenario-wise, they do compare because they have both played them. Obviously, Oregon looked a lot better against Purdue than Illinois did. Michigan, not really a team we're really backing right now. So, yeah, it's definitely a suspect schedule, but 25 points against a team that has moved the ball, has played well, has good receivers. Pat Bryant's very good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I would say this spread is large, and especially because coming off of last week, it was a plus 28 spread to Purdue.
Yeah.
This is a game where I expect Illinois to be much more in it than that. So I completely agree with what you're saying. Now it's my turn. And you're going to...
You actually did it.
I did it. I absolutely did it.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, look.
I am going to let you speak, but I love it. I hope you know that I absolutely love it. This is the chaos I live for.
So I did not like any numbers this week. It was not pretty. But then I saw this number, and I went, okay. Florida State has been so bad, terrible. Okay, let's go down to this.
1-6. So
let's go down to these scores. Not good at all.
And Cal choked that game away. Let's not forget that.
Oh yes, absolutely. But it was a game where Cal had to go travel all the way to Tallahassee from California.
Right.
So, but okay, let's get into this for real though. Miami Hurricanes play close games. That's all they do. They don't know how to not play in a close game.
Look at their last three.
Yep, absolutely. 38-34,
Combined,
39, 38.
12 points.
12-point differences.
For 3 games.
I'm picking a team that's at plus 21 who is better than they're playing, truly. We have good defensive players. We have a good running core.
Yeah.
We aren't playing DJU anymore, which is awesome. I'm loving that. It's not like our backups are any better, but we are trying to do other things rather than go through him.
Well, at least he's played some now. Got some actual game time under his belt now.
Oh, yeah. Cam Ward is amazing. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can keep up with the scoring, but I don't know that we're going to be 3 touchdowns worse. It is in Miami, but that's not that far of a trip. That is down the Panhandle.
Miami fans don't go to Miami games because it's an hour from campus.
Right, exactly. So with this game, I think that Florida State can at least keep it close. I think that they could win this game, actually, funny enough, because I think Miami is so unpredictable that Florida State could find a way to just win this game for no reason. It's not like they have a reason to win this game. It would just be to piss off Miami fans because we do have a somewhat rivalry in state.
Yeah. Oh, there's definitely something there.
So,
especially after how last season ended and when.
Yeah. I think that this game is very close.
We were running long on the top 25 part, but I really wanted to say Florida State has the chance to do the funniest thing. And then you ended up bringing it up. So
I'm not predicting it, obviously, but I think plus 21, like that's a very reasonable number when you have teams like Florida State who has been good in the past. Miami has not. And when they have to meet after those things have switched, sometimes it just gets a little funny.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a close game like all of the Miami games in the past. So let's just go with it.
I would love it.
I'm a Florida State fan, so maybe a little biased. We talked about this last week. You were a little
You
bit.
have to say no bias and laugh while you're saying it.
Oh, I'm definitely
Very
biased.
clear.
Definitely biased that we suck.
That's true.
So very clear there.
We're
All
both
right.
on that side.
But
Got that part down.
But I'm excited to see how this goes because I think that plus 21 is a little egregious for a team that is actually, funny enough, I don't think that these are bad losses. Except for SMU.
16. Well, I mean, you can't even really say that about SMU. SMU's looked pretty good.
That's a 26-point game. That's pretty bad.
At SMU.
Okay.
It's not as bad as it looks because of how SMU is this year. It's
Right.
hard to forget the last 20 years of SMU.
Fair enough.
And then at Duke, they're also 6-1. I think
they're 6-1. 6-1 for all of the teams.
A touchdown to a 6-1 team is not exactly
right. We literally have played in the 4 weeks. So from SMU to Miami, we played 4 teams with 2 total losses.
Yeah.
SMU undefeated, Clemson and Duke 1 loss, and then Miami 7-0.
SMU's not undefeated. They lost to BYU.
You were correct. Sorry,
that was
3 total losses.
By 3 points.
3 total losses. My bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're playing against this team that's really good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've played good teams. We have not lost by 21 except for against SMU, and we've gotten better every week.
I love it.
And that includes without DJU.
I love this pick.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I loved your last one, and it hit.
Yeah.
I'm
5-0. Yeah, if you don't believe in me,
I need you to win a Super Dog week, though.
God, this is not going to be it.
Arkansas over Tennessee, and especially for it to happen now, because that would be amazing if you pulled it off.
I will wear all my Florida State stuff.
Oh yeah,
it'll be on.
You absolutely should.
Yes. So I'm very excited about this.
Yeah.
This is our last segment, so we will stop sharing. We will get on out of here. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. It was a little bit longer of a show because we had a cool new conference roundup to talk about with all these percentages going out about the playoffs. So,
quick, what happens, Vandy, Texas?
I think Texas.
That, did you?
I think Texas starts off very slow. I think they win, but
who starts?
Oh, it's definitely.
Are we sticking with Quinn?
No, Quinn has to play.
Okay.
I mean, what you're gonna sit Quinn when Arch was just as bad?
I don't want to get too into it because we are at the end, but how the fact Sark benched Quinn, it was shocking to me.
It was a very poor move.
Especially because pregame they said, what would it take to bench him? And he said an injury.
Oh no, I was literally watching. I was like 20 foot from that moment.
And Quinn's been saying,
game day.
I'm good now.
Yeah.
So either someone's lying or there's got to be a mental shot in there somewhere.
He is a mental midget. To say the least. Quinn Ewers is a mental midget. That is not a hot take.
Even Sark for doing that to him.
I agree. That was not okay. After talking about how he's been with him for 3 years and saying like we are together, we think we think the same way and things like that. Yeah, no, it was definitely.
We're gonna put in the young guy.
Everybody in the stands wanted it, and they were like all excited. I was sitting with people that were like all excited that Arch went in, and then he got shit on too, and it didn't change anything.
Yeah,
because Georgia came to play, and the offensive line did not. Blocking was not there. Running was not. So yeah, we got into UT. UT is a whole thing. By itself. But definitely an interesting game.
Yeah.
But we appreciate y'all hanging out with us for sure, and hopefully we answered some cool, fun things about the upcoming playoffs that are going to be in 4-ish weeks. 5-ish weeks, or prediction, or the college football playoff prediction, and bracket setup. Basically,
that should come out in a couple weeks.
We will be releasing our brackets and predictions for our own. I will not be putting, just so you know, I'm not putting Liberty in it. It makes you feel better.
If you did, I'd leave the show.
I bet you would. But I'm very excited about the rest of the season, and hopefully y'all will hang out with us as we go through it.
Thank y'all very much for joining us today.
Absolutely.